Hey guys, I'm Lex and welcome to Words of This Life. So today's video is a story time about my first day in prison, and I know that a number of people have done similar videos on YouTube before, but the specific inspiration for this one comes from my Pookie, otherwise known as Christina Randall. And I know a number of you found my channel through her channel, but if you don't know who she is and you've never watched any of her videos, click on the link in the description box to her channel. All right, so before we get started, I just want to say that there are definitely some details that I don't remember about this day. I think that's partially because of the trauma of it, from the exhaustion of it, and then also because it was so many years ago now that there are specific details that I don't remember. However, there are some things that do stand out, and really they were the more traumatic or embarrassing or humiliating type of moments. So I'm going to be talking about a lot of those. It is a heavy subject. Going to prison and going to jail is not fun at all, and it is a very dehumanizing experience overall. It can be a very abusive environment, definitely emotionally abusive, and at times physically abusive as well. I did not experience any physical abuse in prison, but I know people who did. Even sitting down to write some of this stuff out kind of triggered some trauma and some different memories of things that I hadn't talked about in a long time or processed through. So just keep that in mind as you're listening, and then bear with me as I don't remember all of the details fully. Okay, so to pick up kind of where I left off in the last video about the arrest that sent me to prison, I was in county jail. I had been transferred from one county to the other county and was waiting in this other county to be transferred to prison. And you never knew the day that you were going to be transferred. And they don't give you that information because they don't want you calling a family member or a friend and telling them where you're going to be, what day you're going to be transferred, and then they can come and get you and help you break out and escape. Might sound ridiculous, but it does happen, so they guard all of that by not telling you when you're going to be leaving. Now, I was a mess in county jail, and I don't think that I thought that at the time. I thought that I was coming to a place of really accepting where I was and what was happening, but looking back now, I just realized a lot of that was denial. So I had pretty severe anxiety issues before jail, and believe it or not, they followed me to jail. Imagine that. And so the waiting to be transferred did keep my anxiety on pretty high alert. I was having panic attacks almost daily in the county jail, and I think a lot of that was just due to being sober. So one of the main reasons that I drank and did drugs and other substances because I had such a hard time communicating with people if I was sober, because I felt so paranoid and so fearful and so panicked. And so in the absence of those things, I had a really hard time communicating with people. And so even sitting in a group of people and being asked a question was enough for me to just basically go off the deep end and have to walk away crying and hyperventilating because I couldn't handle it. And so yeah, waiting to be picked up and taken to this next season of my life was definitely hard. There was a lot of just being in limbo and waiting for your day to roll around. So when they come to get you, they handcuff your wrists and your ankles, you're shackled, and you kind of all shuffle in a single file over to where the transport vehicles are. And these transport vehicles, they are just basically a metal box. And so some of them have metal dividers on the insides of the boxes, and so if there's multiple people in there, you are separated by these dividers. I don't remember if this one did or not. Also, I spent entirely too much time on these transport vehicles because of different things. I had to go out to the medical prison a couple of times for different injuries and testing that needed to be done. And then also I got switched back and forth from one prison to the other numerous times for psychological issues, for having breakdowns, or for being a self-harm risk, or different things like that. So I spent a lot of time in the backs of those. Some were worse than others. This one was particularly rough this day because I was going to a place that I didn't know about yet, that was unfamiliar, and I have IBS. Sorry if that's TMI, but it was significantly worse back then. And I just remember thinking, I am in this tiny metal box, which is hard for anyone with claustrophobia anyway, and I'm going to crap my pants in the back of this truck. And I didn't, you'll be happy to know, but it was very much a fear, and I'm just thankful that that didn't happen. So tiny little box, you're cuffed, you can't move, you're not talking to the people in there with you, and you're just on this bus. It was a very anxiety-filled situation, and not just for me, but for everybody, because you're going to this new thing that you know nothing about yet. Now, a word about the officers in the jails. I had been in a few different county jails, and none of them stood out as being overly mean or aggressive or anything like that. No, none of them stood out as being nice or friendly either. But it's like the difference between what I experienced, at least with the guards in jail versus the guards in prison, was like night and day. From the second that you step off of that transport vehicle onto the property, it's like they are immediately supposed to start screaming at you and yelling at you and do this, go here, look away, look over here, don't do this, don't talk to her, don't say this, don't do that, take off your clothes. Yes, take off your clothes. I'll get back to you in a minute on that part of it. But they are just barking these commands at you, and they're just words, but you can feel so much more behind their words. You can feel that they are genuinely disgusted with you for being brought there, and for whatever you did, they are just disgusted, and you can feel that from them. And so for someone with a lot of worth issues who was not confident, maybe there are people that confidently walk into prison and don't care what people do or say. That was not me. I was a very broken, very depressed, full of self-hatred. That was who I was. And so when they're saying these things and looking at you these certain ways and projecting their feelings onto you of just how disgusted they are by you, for me, it just confirmed what I already believed about myself, that I was garbage. And I don't know this for sure, but I would imagine that in their training, somehow they are trained to have some kind of hard exterior or something so as not to be manipulated. And what I mean by that is that, you know, when someone is consistently engaging in criminal activity, especially when there is addiction and other things like that involved, those people, including myself, there is a tendency toward manipulation. And so, again, I don't know this for sure, but I just wonder if in their training, they're like, you need to talk to them, treat them, remember, believe that they are garbage, because if you don't, they're going to manipulate you. So if you've ever been a corrections officer and you can kind of speak into that some, please do. I don't know if they're taught that. If they're not taught that, then it's just this weird thing that happens to the vast majority of corrections officers that I ever encountered, at least. It's like this robotic, you're garbage, you're garbage, you're garbage, you're garbage sort of thing that they carry, and you feel that from them. And it's hard, probably harder for some people than others. It was very, very difficult for me. So they are saying these things to you, you're feeling these things from them, and then the next thing that I remember is you have to go into this big rectangular room with a bunch of women. They tell you to take your clothing off. So you're standing there just stripped naked in a room full of people, and they have you lift your boobs, squat into a deep squat, and cough. They want to make sure that you don't have anything hidden under your boobs or inside of yourself, but it is absolutely humiliating to have to do that in a room full of people. And I never talked to anybody about that day until I got out of prison and started processing some of the things. In fact, it had been years that I had been out of prison and started processing some of the things that happened there and realizing what a dehumanizing and humiliating and abusive environment it sort of is. And so this was the start to that. This was the welcome wagon into prison. But the next thing that I remember is going into this open bay type of room where I think we had to meet with different people, different intake officers, and answer questions. I think this is also where we got our prison blues. We were handed our uniforms and our towels and washcloths and things like that that we would take to the dorm with us. And what stands out the most about that, though, is that there was this bathroom area that actually I'll just call a toilet area. So there were these toilets, and I don't remember there being any separation in between the toilets, but if there was, it was very small or short because you could see the people next to you going to the bathroom and they could see you. And I just remember, again, feeling like, maybe not even at the time, just feeling ashamed at the time, but now looking back, it's like, shouldn't we have the right to go to the bathroom in privacy? Well, no, you shouldn't, because you're a criminal and you shouldn't have that right. The next thing that I remember after that is the walk from the intake area to the dorm that I was going to be staying in. And I have never actually seen Orange is the New Black for personal reasons. I just have decided not to watch it. But I did see a clip one time of, or maybe a trailer, where there's women standing at the gate and they're like, hey girl, you know, watching people walk by and making weird comments and sucking their teeth at them and all that. And It's exactly like that. At any time that you're going to a new facility, a new prison, a new area on the compound, a new dorm, you are just looked at as fresh meat. So you're making that walk to the dorm, and then you get into the dorm, and I do remember them assigning me a bed. I remember going to my bed, and then the next thing that I remember after that is count time. So count time happens, I believe, 5 times a day, at least in the state of Florida. I don't know if it's like that everywhere else, but they count you. You have to sit on your bed with your ID showing, and you have to let them know that you are who you're supposed to be and that you're in the bed that you're supposed to be in, and they go around and count and make sure that everybody's in the right place and that everybody's the right person. And so I remember that, and I don't really remember anything else from that day, which is surprising to me. I really sat down and tried to think about it more and think about some of the things that I was feeling and some of the things that were happening, and a lot of it was just coming up blank. And so again, it was a long time ago, and there was a lot of trauma that happened that day and then in the years to come from that moment. So some of it is just blocked out. But if you have ever been to Lowell Correctional Institution and you did your intake that day, and that's where you arrived, and you experienced your first day in prison there as well, please comment and tell me what you remember about it, or shoot me an email, because I would love to hear other people's perspectives. So just to give you kind of some details about what the area looked like, all of the intake stuff happened on what's called the annex. And so at this particular prison, LCI, there is an annex and then there's a main unit, and everybody comes in through the annex. And then at some point, most people get sent over to the main unit. And I don't remember exactly how long it is. I feel like it was probably 2 weeks, maybe a month. I do know that it was long enough for me to get my super ridiculously long butt length bleach blonde hair put in microplaits. So I had hundreds of these tiny little microplaits, and I don't remember how long that took, but I'm imagining that I waited there for at least a few weeks before getting moved on to the next area. And so our day-to-day there looked like getting up, eating, going to walk around this little, I was going to say track, but it's definitely not a track. It's the perimeter of the fence, and we would just go walk around that like a track. Let me just say that that's not the perimeter of the actual prison, because you will be shot if you go up to that one. So this was not that. This was the dorm, the intake dorm that I was in, had some pavilions outside and then a little field area, and then it was all fenced in and separated from the other dorms that were on the annex. Now also on the annex was the solitary confinement building, which was huge, and death row. As I mentioned before, when I was shipped back and forth from between these two different prisons, I ended up in solitary confinement. Anytime that you were a risk to yourself for self-harm or a risk to someone else, they would put you in solitary confinement. So I had a few of those experiences there as well. So all of that was on the annex side. And then I think there was a medical dorm over there as well for people that had terminal diseases or communicable diseases, things like that. They were kept in a separate part. Most of my time in that dorm was not super memorable. I do remember one time when I tried to give myself a tattoo with pencil lead. And I also remember a time that I went and ran around that track thing that I mentioned so many times that I threw up and hyperventilated because I'm not a runner. So I don't know what got into me that day. I don't know if I was trying to be cool. I don't know if I wanted to get some endorphins flowing. I don't know what the deal was, but I thought that I would just go run around. And I don't remember how many times I did, but it made me very, very sick. So when they come to get you to take you to the main unit, you have been assigned to a new dorm, and on the annex part at the intake, everybody is together, adults and YOs, which I'll explain that in just a second. Once you get to the other side, then you are separated into different dorms, and there's a bunch of adult dorms, and then there is one YO dorm, youth offender dorm, or at least at this particular prison there was one YO dorm. And so you are with people that are mostly 21 and under. I'm going to do a different video about what it was like to be in the YO program, because it was very, very different than my first day on the annex. There was a lot of craziness and a lot of, oh my goodness, what have I gotten myself into sort of moments on the first day in the YO dorms. But I will leave it at that for today, and I will include a lot of those details in the next video so you can have a better idea of what the YO program was. And I just want to say that I hope that this video is helpful and informative. If you know someone who is in jail or prison and their life is just a wreck and they're having all kinds of problems, I hope that hearing this and then hearing other parts of my story will help you maybe have compassion for them, because everybody has a story and we really never know what happened in someone's life that led up to the point of them doing criminal activity and ending up in jail or in prison. And so I hope that if there's anything that you take from this, that it would be some compassion, and that you would even be able to pray for people who are hurting in this way, because prison is not a fun place. It is not a supportive place. It's not a place where you find community that helps you heal. And that's really what people who are in jail and prison often need, unless they're completely innocent, which happens as well. But for people that have been sent there for these patterns in their lives, the things that they're doing to get them in trouble, a lot of what they need is community and help and healing and prayer. So you can be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem, simply by viewing people differently and realizing that we are all just one stupid mistake away from doing something that could get us in a lot of trouble. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If this is your first time here, thank you for stopping by. And if you have been here before, thank you so much for taking the time to watch again. I hope to see all of you guys next time on Words of This Life.